how they in the modern time understand. You know, in the Gospel of John, the Samaritan woman met Jesus, and Jesus said, "You drink my water, then you won't be thirsty."
If you find a Jesus with long hair, beard, blue eyes, and a nice fine skin, and he has water in his hand, and he says to you, "Drink my water and you'll never be thirsty again in your life," yeah, you should do it. I don't know where you go to find that, but if you ever find such a man, Gening, you should make sure text me so I could come there as well and have a sip of that water. I don't disagree with you. You know, Seneca has, and I'm sure you've read this piece, on the shortness of life. I think it's what he says is right on. You know that life is really, really, really too long. Once you understand the basic structure of life, once you understand the basic structure of how desires come about, how your journey begins, how you're satisfied, how you lose interest, how you become indifferent, how boredom, is born. And then you put that particular mapping into everything in life. I mean, first it's going to take you some time to kind of understand that chart. How the five senses work, how desires are born, how desires blossom into or force you into a journey, and what sorts of crazy things you'll do to, grab, obtain what you want, and then play with it, and then be saturated, and then lose interest, and then become bored and dissatisfied and unhappy. And then you reflect back, wondering why you ever wasted your time with that stuff in the first place. That'll take you about 20 years to figure out. And then what are you going to do with the rest of your life now that you know from the age 30 all the way to the time you die, that's how your life will be, that every moment there's a desire to be born, and then there's a journey to be taken, and there is an indifference that's waiting for you, and then boredom, and then what? And when you kind of understand this, you say, why do anything at all? And from that point on, life becomes way, way, way too long. When people say life is too short, it's because they don't really understand it. They don't really understand the nature of pleasure. They don't understand what they're doing. I can't disagree with the Gospel of John. In other words, I can't disagree with Jesus. That would be, not the best thing for me to do, given that lightning could strike. If I was to disagree with Jesus Christ, that he is wrong and I'm right. He is right. But I think he doesn't spell out, whoever the author of this particular gospel is, and whether or not that story is actually a true story. You know Annette Kaiser, who was a student of Irina Tweedy, married with 3 kids, I think, and she had a good job. She would always play with, the philosophical, spiritual ideas, but she was really never that serious until she met Irina. So she falls in love with Irina, and she does what the Gospel of John suggests, which is she wants to drink from the fountain that Irina drinks from. Okay. What happens to Annette is that she gets a divorce. Her children suffer because of that. Okay, so now she's fine. Now her husband probably is remarried, and her kids have recovered. You meet an Irina and she says to you, drink from the fountain from which I drink. It sounds really, really good. The chaos that is created by drinking from that fountain, to the point that the dust settles, it may be 10 years, it may be 20 years, it may be 30 years, it may never settle. You may eventually come to perhaps doubt the whole thing. But what the chaos does, it destroys everything that you have built up to this point. And I think whoever is telling you that drink from this fountain, they either know something about you. In other words, they must be clairvoyant. They must have a tremendous amount of faith and trust in God, in you, in themselves, that they say, make this sacrifice. Lose your husband, lose your children. I know what's waiting for you. It's going to be far greater. And I'll help you with the pain. I'll help you with the suffering. I'll help you with the heartbreaks. And eventually you'll be healed. It will take you 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I'll support you whenever you crash. If you have that kind of a support system, and in fact, if their fountain is as true and real as they claim to be, I think it's a huge responsibility. It's like when you go to a therapist. So you've tried your friends, you've tried your parents, you've tried figuring things out yourself. You realize it's not working. You talk to your friends, you realize after a while that's not working. You go to your parents and you tell them what's happening, hoping that they can help, but that doesn't work. Then you go to a therapist. Okay. The therapist will help you dig out all the narratives that have remained kind of behind closed doors for many, many, many years. The problem is eventually you're the only one who has to become intimate with them. You have to kind of figure out how to look at this big puzzle and how to put the pieces together in a healthy way. No one can do it for you. You may get exhausted. You may lose interest. It may be just too much for your body and mind. You may be consumed by anger and you will never be able to get out of it. And then anger will turn into rage. I don't know if you drink from Jesus' fountain, you'll actually experience what he experienced, which was God, perhaps. It's a risk. I think it's true. I think the saying is very true. I'd rather hang out with Plato and Socrates rather than one of my bum friends. I can learn from them, from Plato and Socrates. But what I have to pay for that learning, it's unknown to me. There is this poem that they have ساقیا بده جامی زان شراب روحانی تا دمی بیاسایم زین حجاب جسمانی. Just the first line, ساقیا بده جامی زان شراب روحانی. Saqi is like God, or someone who pours wine into your cup. It says, give me a wine that is of spiritual quality. I have been to all these bars, taverns, and I've drank wine and beer, and hard liquor, soft liquor, somewhere between liquor. And they help me forget, they help me escape for a day, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe a week, but eventually my troubles will come back. I realize I'm a human being, a stranger in a strange land. I am tired of just getting myself drunk, forgetting, and then realizing that nothing about me has changed. And it's a prayer. Give me a wine that transforms me forever. That I can forever escape my physical body and my physical life. I think it's if someone can take you, show you where that bar is, show you who that bartender is, so you could request the spiritual wine, that once you drink it, everything about you will become spiritual. Everything that you see and you touch and you taste and you smell and you hear will have spiritual quality and fragrance to them. I think it'll be great. Because that is what you also find in Conference of the Birds. Why do you want to be happy and sing? Because the rose has blossomed. Did you know that the life of a, rose fully blossomed open is no more than maybe a week? Mm. What's going to happen to her joy after a week? It's going to turn into sorrow. Why would you want to do that? And the bird is told, come follow me. I'll take you to a place where roses, open and they never die. And so you could be happy all the time. I don't know if the bird has the stamina of flying that high and being on the journey for so many days. I don't know what the bird, how he'll be supported when he has doubts and disbelief and conflict and fear, hatred. When we were going to gatherings, I would ask similar questions, But after a few years, I would never ask those questions because I just found comfort in the environment Hussein was creating. I couldn't get that, experience that anywhere else. So I no longer needed to ask questions. I have found where my home was and where I belonged. And in the morning when I would go to the car wash and wash cars, the impact of the night's conversation was still inside me. And then it would slowly go away, like around 5:30 or 6 in the evening. I would go home and I would just kind of be exhausted. And then I would have this longing. I wanted to go back to Hussein, but I couldn't. He wouldn't gather and I didn't want to trouble him. But I do know that, the other 2-3 people who were at the gatherings, they don't have my job. My job is I just read books and write books and think and talk about them. It's an extension of Hussein's environment. I have kept that alive for myself through all the things that I do. The other 2 fellows, that doesn't exist for them. Yusuf is... Sarah tried to take him to school yesterday and she drops him off, and one of the teachers calls Sarah after a half hour saying, "We can't stop him from crying. He just has been crying since she left. Can you come and pick him up?" And Sarah goes there. This is the story that I was told. Sarah goes there and asks Yusuf, "What's going on? I miss you. I don't want to be here. I want to go home." And so, they spent time together day before yesterday and yesterday. I think if you want something, and if you're in love with it, and if you have a great amount of passion in it, and you have a support system that feels it and protects it, it'll make your journey easier, I think it's very true that you can't serve 2 masters. You can't, live in 2 cities. And I think you'll have a better luck drinking from the fountain of Jesus. And once your thirst has been quenched, then you can go anywhere and drink any water. That water that was given to you by Jesus lives inside you. It's eternal. You will not forget it. You're very intimate with it. And in many ways, I think it's, if I was to kind of connect this to relationships, and forgive me, if you have had a really, really, really good relationship with your father, with your mother, but as a girl, with your father, if you've had a very mature, very kind, very forgiving, very understanding, insightful, wise father, you will always choose men who have qualities that your father, has or has had. And that's the fountain you're drinking from. the experience of your father will protect you from choosing rotten people in your life. If on the other hand, you have never had that father figure, then there's a good chance that you're in the middle of the desert, and it's not always true, but mostly true, that you will fall victim to, men who are rotten in some ways, and they will kind of devastate and destroy your life. And so it would always be like a good thing if you were to find someone like Jesus, like a Jordan Peterson, where you kind of just keep listening his ideas. Or if you like Eckhart Tolle, you keep listening to their ideas until they become your foundation, until they become the fountain from which you drink. And so when you go out with a man, for example, you sit back and you say, so what do you think about philosophy? What do you think about life? And should his ideas not come close to Eckhart Tolle, there's a good chance that you'll just dump him. As long as you have a mature fountain from which you're drinking, that's nourishing you, you'll be fine. The saying that knock and the door shall be opened unto you. Some doors are very, very thick. So when you knock, the people on the inside won't even hear it. It has to be a very, very thin door, so when you knock, people can open it. Thin doors, usually, they're very cheap. I think once you begin to look for the right doors, or right door, and then you summon up the courage and then the strength to knock on this door, and when the door opens to you, you're going to begin to see things that will amaze you, will kind of create awe and wonder within you. And you can go in and you can stay there for a few hours or a few days, and eventually you have to get out, because it's not your house. You have to get out. Whatever door thereafter opens unto you, beginning, if they don't have the qualities that this other door had once opened, you'll just walk away. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse to run into a Socrates and break bread with him and become friends with him. Socrates can benefit you in many ways. He could also harm you, because you lose the ability to have friendships. You lose the ability to be casual, to tell jokes, to laugh at jokes. And if you hang out with Socrates for a long enough period, then every ounce of you will be serious. And there comes a point where you'll just get worn out by your own seriousness, and then you want to rest, and then you feel guilty for resting. But going back to the phrase that you shared, drinking from, Jesus' fountain. If you can find it, drink it. It's good.